to the ITSM Practice Podcast.
Hello, I'm Luigi Ferri and welcome back to the ITSM Practice Podcast. There is a sentence I have heard many times in the last months. It usually comes at the end of a meeting when decisions are already drifting away. PSD3. Sounds like PSD2 all over again. No frustration, no urgency, just the quiet confidence of someone who believes they already understand what's coming. But what if that confidence is exactly what PSD3 is challenging? Why does PSD3 exist at all? If PSD2 had delivered what Europe expected, PSD3 would not exist. PSD2 opened the payments world. It encouraged innovation, competition, new actors, new flows of money and data. And then reality stepped in. Fraud didn't disappear, it adapted. Authentication existed. People were still convinced to do the wrong thing. APIs were available. Security quality depended heavily on who you were talking to. And when money was lost, the explanation was often short and final. The customer authorized the payment. What happens when something is legally correct but practically unacceptable? PSD3 starts exactly there. So, what changed between PSD2 and PSD3? PSD2 was built around access. Who can connect? Who can initiate payments? Who can read account data? PSD3 looks at something more uncomfortable. It looks at abuse of trust, impersonation scams, spoofed payment requests, customers guided step by step to authorize transactions that should never have happened. This leads to a different question. If the system accepts a payment that ruins a customer, what exactly did we secure? PSD3 does not answer this loudly, but it answers it clearly. Is a strong authentication still enough? Strong customer authentication remains a cornerstone, but PSD3 removes the illusion that it is sufficient on its own. Everyone in payments knows this, even if it rarely said out loud. A flawless authentication flow does not protect a customer who is being manipulated in real time. PSD3 makes space for something else: context, behavior, pattern, signals, which leads to a deeper question. Are our security controls designed only to verify identity or also to recognize danger? This is where security quietly turns into judgment. And what about APIs? Are they just technical plumbing? Under PSD2, APIs had to exist. That was the objective. Under PSD3, existence is no longer enough. Availability, performance, monitoring, fallback mechanism, these stop being details discussed only between engineers. Because when an API fails, delays or behaves unpredictably, trust erodes. So the question becomes, are APIs still just interfaces or are they now promises? Promises we must actively keep. For service and security teams, this is a meaningful shift. APIs move inside the trust perimeter. And what does all this mean for mid-sized banks and fintechs? At this point, the regulation fades into the background. What remains are a few unavoidable questions. Are we still treating fraud as a security problem only, or, and this is important, as a part of the customer experience? When something goes wrong, do we stop at the customer authorized it? Or do we ask what could have been prevented earlier? Do we know who has the authority to stop a transaction that looks correct but feels wrong? Are fraud scenarios discussed calmly in advance or only under pressure after losses occur? When APIs degrade or fail, do we respond as technicians or as custodians of trust? These questions are not about compliance. They are about readiness. A PSD3 quietly insists that these answers must exist before the next incident. PSD3 is not PSD2 repeated. It is PSD2 stripped of its illusions. For mid-sized banks and fintechs, this is not a race against regulation, the compliance theater. It is a pause and a test of maturity. Payment security is no longer only about processing transactions correctly. It's about recognizing when trust is being abused and having the courage to interrupt the flow. That is the real shift PSD3 introduced. Next, we move from understanding to action, if you want it. We'll get into where organizations should actually start without kicking off massive programs, which conversations need to happen first, and who needs to be in the room, how to avoid starting too late or in the wrong order. No playbooks, no fluff. Just the first smart moves that make PSD3 manageable, not overwhelming. That's where the real work begins. Want more episodes about PSD3? Say so. Drop a comment or connect with me on LinkedIn. Your feedback decides whether I record it. Thank you for listening. I'm Luigi Ferri, and this was the ITSM Practice Podcast. Arrivederci.